And this is KEXU 96.1 FM, Pole People's Revolutionary Radio. I'm JV with my co host Karena Cripayes. Welcome back, Karena.
Thank you, Joy. Buenas noches a toda mi raza en Aslan.
Buenas noches. And we got a very good show. We have our sister Desiree Rojas back again. And we're going to introduce her in a minute. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about there's an action taking place in the Texas prison system with Texas prisoners are going on a hunger strike. And this is going to take place on Juneteenth, this June, on Juneteenth. And this is what's very interesting, just like the California struggles within the concentration camps, the Texas prisoners, it's various groupings of, they have new African prisoners, they have Chicano prisoners, and many other prisoners as well. They're coming together on Juneteenth, and they're going to demand an end to the restrictive housing units, which is Texas's equivalent of the shoes, the security housing units here in California. So they're asking for a multitude amount of changes. And what's a little different here in the Texas struggle that's taking place is the leadership of this mass movement, the hunger strike movement in the Texas prisons. These are revolutionary prisoners. These are conscious, politicized prisoners who are at the helm leading this movement in Texas. And Texas is a very reactionary state. One of the things I should note that is very interesting is the Texas prisoners in this, the struggle that they're doing. One of the things that they're attacking is censorship, and specifically of the censorship of the book Chicano Power and the Struggle for Aztlán, because in Texas prisons, that book is banned. It's banned in the state of Texas. They will not allow Texas Chicano prisoners or any prisoners to get the book. So this is one of the things that they're tackling in Texas prisons. So it's going to be very, very interesting. In particular, hopefully out of this struggle, they do get the Chicano Red Book, as we like to call it, here at Free Aztlán. And, hopefully they get the Chicano Red Book because it is something that all Chicano prisoners should be able to read, their real uncut history. And so we look forward to supporting them. We're going to bring you more updates on the Texas prison strikes that are coming around the corner. And so we're going to be talking with our sister Desiree Rojas, and we love Desiree. She's been on the show more than anybody else, and she's always with us. But we're going to have her coming on in a minute, and I thought that it's only right that if we have her on, it's only right that we read her beautiful land acknowledgement that she wrote, right?
Of course, yes, of course.
I love it. And Desiree wrote this for us, wrote this for Raza everywhere, Chicano people, Chicano nation, everybody and everybody else to understand our place as Chicano people here on the land we stand on. We do have a place here. And, and those who are not educated to that, they don't know. And so then they, continue to parrot the idea that we're somehow foreigners on our own land, that we have walked for thousands of years.
And that we can do our own land acknowledgements on Aztlán. And we have the inherent right to do that.
Absolutely. We have the right, and we will exercise that right. And so let me kick this show off, by reading Sister Desiree Rojas's land acknowledgement. And it goes as follows. As we enter this space, let us be mindful of the native peoples of the American continent especially during this time when millions of families will sit around their table to enjoy a turkey dinner in honor of the native peoples, empathy toward the English immigrants, colonists who were starving to death and dying from freezing winters of the northeastern climate, saved by the Wampanoag people, ending with the feast we know today as Thanksgiving. Let us be mindful that we have not forgotten the history of the betrayal and genocide of the native peoples of the North, Central, and South American continent. Let us be mindful that we stand on Aslan. We stand on original native peoples' lands from Wampanoag, Inuit, Lakota, Blackfoot, Pueblo, Chichimeca, Triqui, Tonga, Miwok, Apache, Tule, Mayan to the tribes of Peru, Brazil, and Argentina. Most importantly today, let us be mindful that the freedom of Leonard Peltier, now going on over 46 years being imprisoned, has everything to do with all of our freedom and liberty, especially when previous presidents granted clemency by the thousands, all of whom overlooked Leonard Peltier. Presidents Clinton, George Bush Jr., Obama, and Trump granted a total of 2,823 cases to murderers, drug sellers, federal tax evasions, bank robber, and even war criminals, but not Leonard Peltier. Let us be mindful that it's time to free Leonard Peltier now. And let us be mindful that the original people's struggles and genocide continues. Over 70,000 farm workers of Triqui Nation live and work in San Quintin, BC, Mexico, who harvest the Driscoll and Andrew Williamson berries for a daily wage equivalent to the cost of a plastic box of Driscoll berries. After enduring forced migration due to foreign policies like NAFTA, today's USMCA, and CAFTA that create poverty among indigenous native peoples of Mexico, be mindful that tribes today in our nation continue without water, decent housing, healthcare, and services to protect Native women, trans women, and people from going missing and murdered. We are still on the front lines, shutting down corporate oil lines, defending our Mother Earth and the Water is Life movement, educating anyone who cares about MMIWP and resisting. Be mindful that the American continent, its original people, are still here because we are the survivors, children of genocides, colonization, and land grabs that removed, forced migrated our people then and now off, quote unquote, off our lands into reservations, pueblos, and rancherias. Like today's NAFTA, USMCA, be mindful that we still exist and we stand on our lands and we walk with you today for justice, democracy, liberty, and freedom. Aho. Oh, Mateo. And that was beautiful words by the sister Desiree Rojas.
Thank you, Desiree. We love that.
Absolutely. And so we want to welcome Desiree now. Desiree Rojas, welcome back to Free Aslan.
Well, I just want to say, otra vez, you guys have pulled me away from my novela. And feel like I'm in the living room with you.
Oh,
All right.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank you again for reading that land acknowledgement. That's actually the nice version of what I did write. The piece that I have is far more aggressive. But it was a very important piece that I wrote when I felt just a great amount of sadness always during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Because, our people's way is to share and to follow the grandmother's permission. and to think like one family, one commune, one tribe, and it's in our nature to want to live amongst all living things in the ecosystems of wherever we live, north, west, south, east, and our tribe, through migration and following the harvest, we learned how to do that. And if we saw an animal suffering, or if we killed an animal, we gave respect and prayers and offerings, and that's a part of our ceremony. That's a part of giving respect back to the Mother Earth. So when we see, foreign people that were sick, mentally, physically sick and dying, we wanted to help them, but we were betrayed, and that betrayal continues. But it is in our heart and it's in our spirit to be a loving, childlike people, and we must always remember that our foundation and our core is to live in peace and with nature. And today, unfortunately, we're living in a different world through the many hundreds of years of being colonized and forced to assimilate into whatever system or environment that we're a part of, right? So, but through these adjustments and reinventing ourselves, we've done a very good job in holding on to what we could and what we can and what we choose to. And, that's our prayers, our ceremony, our palabra, our understanding of, that we stand on Mother Earth, who we are, where we come from, what languages we speak. There's over, 2,000 indigenous languages spoken in the American continent. And maybe 20 years ago, there was, over 5,000 or 7,000 languages. And right now in Mexico and in Central America, they're investing money and time into preserving languages, because they're our key root to so much of our culture. But I do appreciate you reading that land acknowledgement, and it's very important that we do acknowledge that we stand on Aslan also. And Aslan is actually a word and a term that is older than we can ever understand. It's tied to migration, tied to waters, tied to land. And just like any other language, words change slightly, differently, or a lot. And but this is a word that is used for a very long time. And so saying that much and putting that to the side, I'm honored that you guys invited me back. I really want to talk about the upcoming action that we're organizing. LACLA Sacramento Chapter, Labor Council for Latin American Advancement, is organizing the Primero de Mayo, the International Workers' March. Mm-hmm. This is our 23rd annual march that we've been organizing in Sacramento. And this year is going to be very important. And we're inviting everybody who can drive to Sacramento or who are in this northern region to join us. We will be marching out of SEIU 2015 out of West Sacramento. And all this information is on our LACLA Facebook page, and there's a lot of flyers. Our flyers are already out on Facebook. But we will be marching out of 681 West Capitol Avenue, Suite 100, out of West Sacramento. We're going to huddle at 10, hopefully start marching at 10:30. We'll march over the Golden Bridge, over the river, and our first landing is going to be at the California State Democratic Party headquarters. And then from there, we're going to march to the Federal Immigration Building, where David Solnick is also doing an art project there as well, art panels on the road. But our speakers that will predominantly be farm workers, trabajadores agrícolas, they will speak there at the Democratic headquarters building. And the significance of this, which happens to be the first time this has ever been done, is to be able to hold this party accountable for being, I used to say asleep at the wheel, but I'm saying now belligerent at the wheel, belligerent at the wheel, and for doing nothing. And definitely not supporting the working class, and definitely in the fifth largest economy in the world, not passing health care for all, and not shutting down ICE prisons, which isn't the majority of the prisons that are holding asylum families or people seeking asylum. It's actually the private geo and civic court funded prisons. Now, there's a majority of those prisons, and those are the prisons we want shut down. I mean, all of them, right?
Yeah,
but
CCOA
those
is
are the
another
ones
one.
that are holding families and moving families around. And that's what they do. They move families and people around to different states, so they share the wealth and all that federal contracting. And we want those prisons shut down. And the other issue is, first of all, getting back to Primero de Mayo, International Workers' Day, as many know, May Day came out of the Haymarket riots out of Chicago in 1886. And, the strikers, the workers were striking for an 8-hour day. And it's a very long story. There are people who were murdered, people who were in prison, people who were hung, people who committed suicide. It's a long and very sad story, but it left a significant labor mark in the world. And in the world, people use this day, the Primero Mayo, May Day, as the day to come out in their countries as workers and to take and to speak on a lot of other issues. And they come together and they march. And in other countries, you will see hundreds of thousands of people coming out of this, coming out to march and to participate in their own movement. France, Mexico, Germany, Africa, people all over the world will come out, and in the United States, because they moved May 1st to a Labor Day picnic, like during the summer. It threw, on purpose, it threw workers off and the community off. But now we're really going back into feeding May 1st as the day that we come out and we protest and we march. And so on this day, we're going to be talking about a lot of important issues. And it's going to be very important that people come out, because they're pulling more and more federal funding. And that impacts families and communities and workers. And so we want to be able to hold this party accountable, to say, you're doing nothing. You're complicit. You're complicit in hurting families, hurting workers. Nothing's been passed in Congress to protect workers. In California alone, they've had the opportunity for over 8 or 10 years to pass health care for all. And instead of doing it, they use it as a negotiation, as a negotiating legislative piece to make deals behind the scenes and at the end, people don't get health care for all.
Sure. I think one of the when it comes to the Democratic Party, whether it be California or any other state, there's only one question and one answer. The one thing to consider when you're trying to figure out what the party's going to do, and that is you'll never be wrong. If you just ask yourself, what do the donors want? Then you will be able to determine exactly what the party's going to do. And I'll mention that these donors are beholden to the same corporations as the Republican Party. So, it just goes back to the farce of the two-party system. But anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
Absolutely. And, the other message, both parties have been bought and sold by trinational corporations. And that's just a fact. You're right here in Yolo County, our representatives one of them takes Geo and Civic Corps money. I don't know how Bill Dodd sleeps at night. Cecilia Curry takes PAC money and Pharma money, and like the rest of them.
And wasn't Cecilia Curry supposed to be progressive?
When it comes to funding healthcare or coming up with the solutions for the unhoused. But they are absolutely not confused when it comes time to funding a war. They know how to fund a war.
Well, of course, just keystrokes. When they need to generate money, all they have to do is type in a few keystrokes. So, that's all they have to do. But wasn't Desiree, going back to Cecilia Curry, wasn't she supposed to be the progressive option?
She was never progressive option.
Oh, no?
She was actually someone that wasn't even politically or engaged in the community. She was tapped to run. And that's what corporations do. They tap people to run, they give them a lot of money, and then they win.
Right.
But our message and our strong message is going to be that we want a pathway to citizenship for now the second generation of workers who have been forced to migrate as farm workers or essential workers, janitors, etc., to be able to have some kind of citizenship or some kind of ciudadanía, the right to be able to not only work in this country, but also to return home when they need to see their families and their loved ones and to return back to work, in addition to the right to organize and in addition to the right to overtime, which they're not giving farm workers in the fifth largest economy in the world. Mm-hmm. And this is very important. The program that's in place is very much mimics and echoes the Bracero program, and unfortunately, farm worker protections have been dictated by very bad legislation. And under the Arnold Schwarzenegger's administration, they negotiated that farmers would oversee workers, and that's like the fox overseeing the chicken house, right? And that tells you that the workers do not have the right to organize, or they don't have the labor rights they need to protect themselves. If the boss says, you worked here 2 years, I don't need you anymore, you could get deported, and and you won't have a job anymore. You have no say in that. And so after Obama deported millions of people who he is known as the deporter in chief, right. He's the one who started the first phase of the ICE prisons, and then came in, of course, Trump, who escalated that. But those policies were already in place.
Right, of course, yes.
Right, but the problem is it's the foreign policies, the U.S. government's foreign policies, like yesterday's NAFTA, today's UNSCA, and CAFTA, and all of these agreements that go in and break the infrastructure or the indigenous economies in Mexico and Central America, and they cause these problems.
Right.
You know, and which is the result of so many asylum families seeking to enter the United States.
Right. If just with NAFTA alone, I think I was reviewing a statistic just the other day that I looked it up again, but I think NAFTA resulted in I think 11 to 13 million farmers losing 70% of their income. So when we're considering the influx of people from Mexico, for example, in the 90s, that's a massive number of people that were robbed, you know?
Oh, their lives were robbed, their
Right.
families were separated. It's very, very sad. You know, and now today we have this issue with the war, you know, in Russia and Ukraine. This is very, very, you know, that's another one of our messages for Primero Mayo, is that to end the imperialist wars. And the bottom line is that when capitalism dies, it comes to its deathbed, any part of the world, the reset button has always been wars. These are imperialist war reset buttons, okay? And this is a long history to talk about, but we're going to summarize this, okay? There's another war, like all wars, that create refugee camps, and these wars are ravaging all the continent. Tens of millions of people have been driven out of their countries, entire countries in ruins, famine expanding across the globe, and these ongoing wars and the destruction. It absolutely 100% unleashes against workers and people all over the world. It affects workers everywhere in the world. And so the labor movement, the international labor movement, and workers of the world have come together and have united and have written an international letter, opposing this war and we want to shut it down, to say, this is an imperial war by design, and it needs to be shut down. We're in a very dangerous place, but who's really affected are workers and, of course, innocent people.
And Sister Desiree, I wanted to ask, your father, El Rojas, he was doing a lot of good work, organizing and collaborating with workers here and also workers in Mexico, and this cross, quote unquote, border collaboration. And I just wanted to ask, unfortunately, Al has left us, but who is picking up where Al left off? Who is continuing that cross-border work of workers here in these false U.S. borders, and then workers there in Mexico? Who has continued the work of Al Rojas?
Well, I love your question. First of all, I don't think anyone could fill his shoes, his boots, but we are still organizing in Mexico, and we are still in contact with a lot of our comrades, and we are still involved at a certain level with organizing and taking part in meetings in Mexico with other labor unions and independent unions, newly birthed unions. And because that bridge and that road has already been built, it's given the opportunity for unions there to also take this to the next level in their training and collaborating. Mm. And right now in Mexico, the evolution of their political revolution. And I love this term, evolution of the revolution, because a revolution doesn't just happen, there's an evolution part that takes us on a path to get to where we're going to go. And Mexico has been on that evolution for the last movement for the last, especially the last 15 years. They've gone through an extreme change in labor, and so we're still organizing with the electricians unions. We're still in communication, the teachers union, and of course farm workers in San Quintin and with other unions there. But the beauty of it all is that Mexico, under the new administration, under the President Manuel López Obrador, he has created a larger, expansive, and more transparent labor department that oversees labor cases. So whereas before you had states that would oversee all cases, and now there's been more of definition and defining certain areas of a complaint process or issues at hand, whether it be transportation, labor, whether it be health, environment, etc. Those departments have been strengthened to deal with those specifics, and that was one way to break down, corruption. You follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so this was very important, and this has been part of the process. And so there's a lot of this going on in Mexico, but right now the very vital. We're in a very dangerous place right now. Very dangerous place. Workers in this country, in the United States, I can tell you, I was in Mexico recently, it feels like Mexico is now 20 years ahead of us in their electoral process, in the dialogue of workers controlling their own unions, in the dialogue of expanding healthcare to in rural areas of Mexico, because there's a certain level of free healthcare in Mexico.
Right. I think maybe we should go ahead and mention that some recent news about López Obrador. He just won a referendum at 92% of the vote. So
that's right. There was a recent election. Well, first of all, when the president in Mexico was elected, he announced to the citizens, the voters of Mexico, that in the middle of his term, that he would give the people the opportunity to decide whether he should stay in office or he should go. Okay, and that vote was very important, because what he also said was that he's giving the power to the people to decide whether it's him or someone else to decide whether a president is actually serving, the administration is serving the people.
Yeah, like kind of it's like a job review with the option to terminate you at the review.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And which has never been done before. It's never been done before.
I've never heard of such a thing.
Right. But if you pay attention to what's happening in Mexico, his administration is so working ahead of in a calendar set of visiting many states to review the issues of every state. And every morning he gives a conference, an update to the people, a press conference about what is happening in each state, is happening with the transportation infrastructure, jobs, how the elderly are being taken care of, where money is going, where they're pulling back money, investigations. And every day this man is attacked.
Mm-hmm.
He's attacked every day. And every day he gets up and he faces the world to talk about the direction Mexico is going in. You've never seen anything like that in this country. Okay?
No, absolutely not.
So
and also,
you can,
I was just going to mention that about 3 to 4 months ago, the United States was outed as trying to execute a soft coup on AMLO's administration. It was exposed that they had been funneling millions of dollars through the U.S. Embassy in Mexico to fund U.S. aid, which is, of course, a CIA group, that gets things done in other countries that we see pop up all the time. So, this country is actively trying to remove him, and he's also very hated amongst Western corporate media. So that lets us know at least that he's considered a threat for some reason.
well, that may be true, but I'm going to tell you, the people of Mexico love him so much. And for the first time, they are seeing actual results that it would be very difficult for that to happen without the people of Mexico actually fighting back.
Mm-hmm.
And I could say that confidently. He is very loved, and what's so genuine about him is that he's very transparent. You can't get any more transparent than having a morning brief, a press conference every morning about logistics and the economy and about COVID and the giving updates about where Mexico is in each state every morning. And I can guarantee you on May Day, Primero de Mayo, there will be about 2 to maybe 300,000 people marching to the Círculo in DF, which is a sight to see. I've been there with my father during the Primero de Mayo.
Oh.
And marchers march to Tenochtitlan, to the plaza there, to the plaza, the square. And it's an incredible feeling because, Tenochtitlan is a lake, and they built Mexico City on top of basically a lake.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you hear people marching, you feel an echo. You feel like a drum, an echo, and there's so many people, your heart starts beating fast, because you could feel the energy, and the whole plaza is filled with people. And,
wow.
and they take this day very seriously, but unfortunately in the United States, we have yet to show those numbers. The largest Primero de Mayo march we had in Sacramento was 52,000 people, and that was during the time when they began the very serious attack on I don't like using the term immigrant, but I will say, international workers. Pero that first attack in 2006, we pulled in those numbers, and it was soon after that they started a very serious immigration deportation plan, and I think it was HR 44, and there was another bill that we were fighting as well. But getting back to the worker and the farm worker, I want to stress that on this day in Sacramento, we are going to have farm workers from Los Angeles, Kern County, Fresno, Napa, Northern California, Stockton, and throughout the Valley of California that are going to be coming in to speak, and that are coming in with a lot of emotion because they're so impacted by COVID. They're so tired and broken, overworked, poor, and they feel that participating in this march is going to be extremely important, especially that the demand is that they want a pathway to citizenship now, and also we have the CTA, California Teachers Association. I was told they're going to come out, and a large part of why they're going to come out is because the Democratic Party just voted a new platform in place, and they literally voted in favor of charter schools. And I mean, what a message to send the teachers union, you know, that they want to privatize public schools. So on our flyer, we have a term, public schools see, charter schools no. And we did that partly because of the situation going on in Oakland, California. With in Oakland, I'm sure you know, they want to close like 19 public schools. And I believe they saved about 3 or 5 schools, but there's been a hunger strike there.
Yeah.
And, you know, the party hasn't gone over there. No, but Tony Thurman who's running for state superintendent, he hasn't gone over there to be supportive or to speak on behalf of the families there or teachers or the students. But I could tell you Marco Amaral from San Diego, who's running against him, who LACO has endorsed, he's been over there several times to speak, and I believe he'll be in Sacramento, along with Harpreet Shima, who's also running for Congressional District 9, and we got Cynthia Rodriguez, we also endorsed her, who's running against Jeff Rising, who's a horrible DA of Yolo County. I've said this before, the San Francisco ACLU wrote a report. His name was on that report that, you know, the Attorney General should investigate him for possible prosecutorial misconduct. You have to use the word possible, right? But there's
that's his job. His prosecutorial misconduct.
So we really want Cynthia Rodriguez to win. You know, instead of funding, you know, all these programs, you know, for police departments, she wants to put that money into mental health. She wants to put it into areas that will help families and be on the preventive side, you know, after school programs. And all this money was cut, you know, it started with Ronald Reagan. Cut all the after school programs, all the lunch programs, the clinic programs, the mental health programs, you know, that helped, you know, the working class families. And nobody in this party has said, well, where's all that money? You know, when are we going to get that back? Nothing's come back. They're not giving us anything back. So this is going to be the march to demand, and this is going to be the first time that we've ever showed up to their house to say, you get a big fat F for failure. You failed the working class, you failed workers, farm workers, you failed the elderly, you have failed families, the environment. You're failing with a big fat F. And this, I'm not going to use the F word, all right? But a big fat F.
Yeah. And well, we want to thank you, sister. And, you know, you did speak about mental health. And then I did have a question for, you know, there's so many children and adults in these ICE detention centers. And, you know, we hear how they're treated, you know, with it, they don't have blankets. They're just treated like dogs in a kennel. But you talked about mental health. Do you know do they have access to mental health inside the ICE detention centers? Do you know anything about that, Desiree?
The last of my research that I was told is that there is no mental health. There is you know, the type of training by design in those environments is about crowd control, and moving people around.
They put the children on psychoactive medication to calm them down.
Yeah.
And the children also try to commit suicide, go on hunger strikes themselves.
Oh my.
So
right.
They're quick to put them on psychoactive medication.
These are concentration camps.
Yes.
Okay? Let's call them what they are. They're concentration camps. And they need to be shut down. And now I'm going to say something here, and you guys are not going to like it, and the listeners are not going to like it, but I'm going to tell you what's up and coming. The Democratic Party is so asleep and belligerent at the wheel that we are getting reports, and this is quite frightening to understand, to know. We're getting reports that there's the percentage of Latinos in the country is growing in favor of electing Trump as president again. This is absolutely frightening, and it'll probably happen. Don't be shocked if it does, But until we organize another party and we start an evolution for many parties, a different party, a workers' party, and this is happening now. There are a lot of people right now birthing little parties in their own little communities, like the Manjumbe party in Detroit, okay, which is electing at the community level, which is great, okay?
We need a party for us, huh?
We're going to see more and more of this.
That's what I would love to hear.
Love that idea. But Sister Desiree,
we're going to see more and more of this, and we need to see more and more of this because this party isn't representing us anymore.
Yeah,
okay, it hasn't.
Absolutely.
And
well, it's not designed.
It's not going to change.
Yeah.
And like my friend said, if you want something to die, send it to the Democratic Party.
The graveyard of all quote unquote progressive
movements
and energy. Yes.
And Sister Desiree, let me ask you, because we only have a few minutes left, but let me ask you this. What you said about the Raza possibly voting for Trump. What does that tell us that, because on the one hand they say, Raza is going to be the majority very soon. And as I always say, being the majority of anything doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, because it could be the majority of,
right.
reactionary people. So what does that tell us, that these predictions are coming in that Raza are going to vote Trump? What does that tell us?
We first of all have to look at history, and let's be frank about it. Ronald Reagan created a pathway to citizenship. George Bush Jr. did. It's happened out of the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party can't seem to figure out a pathway to citizenship. So that's one issue that they're saying. The other issue that they're saying is that the promises that they keep making, they don't come through. The Dreamers, the DACA, the asylum families, and then the ICE prisons was the tipping point. Mm-hmm. They said, there's a demand for labor here. You've created these agreements to force us to migrate here. You overwork us, enslave us. You tell us that there's going to be a pathway to citizenship. We have our children here. They grow up here, and now they're in fear that when they come home, their parents or their grandparents won't be here anymore after you've exhausted their bodies and harvesting fruits and vegetables for 2 generations now. And so they're saying, ya basta. Your promises are not, we don't believe them anymore.
Yeah.
So this is the last call to say, we want a pathway to citizenship now, President Biden, and we're not going to wait anymore.
And Desiree, how about the stories? I see these stories of Raza migrants coming here and joining this imperialist military in order to get citizenship or what have you. And when they're out there overseas, fighting other brown people for the oppressor. When they're doing all this stuff, they get a letter from home saying that mama just got deported by Uncle Sam. I mean, what the hell? I mean, it's just incredible that people continue to, hope. I mean, it's very sad, I should say, that people continue to hope and join the imperialist military, and then their families getting deported. Like, what the hell, and it's very sad to see that, our people have been okie doke for so many generations. We've been fed snake oil on the oppressor, and whether Democrat or Republican, what have you. It's very sad to see our people fall victim time and again over this.
Well, my only response to that is, show me what agreement they've held held in honor.
Exactly. And the First Nations
show me,
can,
show me an agreement that has been held in honor.
Yeah.
I mean,
there hasn't been none, because they don't honor any agreement.
Yeah, and then one thing that is not often mentioned about DACA is that, people who don't really understand immigration or what the work permit means is that, just to clarify, DACA does not give anyone a legal status. You're still undocumented. You just have a work permit. So that is that doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? But that's exactly what it is. You have no legal status. You just have a work authorization document. Renewal of that work authorization document is not guaranteed. So you can get it once and never get it again. What DACA did is it gleaned biometrics and bio data on millions of people who had previously been underground. And once you're submitted biometrics and have handed over all your paperwork to the government, you are very easy to locate and deport if they want to. And that's what happened to a lot of people that submitted DACA applications. So, I think people are not critical enough of DACA because they don't, realize like what were the disadvantages of it.
Well, look at the Dreamers. The Dreamers, I've always been like, my God, are we really? Let's think about this. We're talking about the youth getting a pathway to citizenship, but there's no language that includes their parents.
Mm-hmm.
It's like how could you do that? How could you say the children but not the parents? That's a separation of family,
right?
And the children wouldn't have got here had there not been a demand for workers and workers being forced to migrate.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned. I'm glad you mentioned the Dreamers, Desiree, because in 2017, a group of Dreamers disrupted Nancy Pelosi during a press conference and told her that she was a liar and Democrats are deporters. And they said, "Did you think we were going to throw our parents under the bus for the EAD card?" Because, of course, Nancy Pelosi at the time had just come back from authorizing billions of dollars in ramped up militarization at the border, and also with deportation. So it's been the last straw for a really long time now, and it's painful to see election cycles come and go. And
I'm glad you brought this up because I saw this live when it happened.
Oh, yeah.
And I want you to know that I cried.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful sight. But if you really study that action, you'll see that the students afterwards explained themselves. They just didn't react and have an action. They sat down calmly and they explained why they shut her down and shut her voice down. See, it was about shutting her voice down and saying, you are not going to speak and take this platform. We're going to speak because everything that you're going to tell us
is
no vale nada.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, they had like their own little summarized encuentro and they explained why they did and what was the purpose of it. And to me, that was amazing. That was amazing. And it's never been done before. And I was so proud of those students.
Mm-hmm.
Very proud of them. I cried with joy and sadness, but it was a sight to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sister Desiree, we got about 3 minutes left. Is there any last words you want to tell the listeners? Because we're going to be wrapping up in a minute. Anything
So
about the march or where to meet at, what to do?
okay. So again, you can find all this information on our LACLA Facebook page. It's in Spanish and English. All the issues are there. And one of the strong issues that at the bottom of our flyer is a very strong statement that we're saying is recolectamos frutas y verduras por salarios de pobreza. And that is going to be a term we're going to be using. We've harvested your fruits and vegetables for poverty wages, and ya basta. We're done doing that now. This is our demand. And one thing I want to say is that the price of food is going up, and many people are returning to Mexico because they can actually survive in Mexico. There's a minimum wage there. There's a strong economy there.
Yeah.
And who's going to pick the fruits and vegetables here? Mm-hmm. Who's going to harvest? Who's going to do this specialized work? We need to get out of this term of calling farm workers immigrants. First of all, we're not immigrants. Like my father said, we are not immigrants. We are the original people of this continent. And farm workers, farm work and harvesting fruits and vegetables is a specialized work. What we should be calling farm workers is agricultural engineers. Maybe if we call them agricultural engineers, we could change their duty statement to reflect something out of the Bay Area.com employment, and change the way that we look at farm workers, and maybe strengthen their labor protections, because they're looked upon as being basically agricultural slaves.
Yeah.
And doing farm worker labor work is very, very specialized.
Right.
It's very specialized. You can't just prune a grapevine. You can't just prune an orange tree. You have to be trained. You have to know when to do those things. And it's very specialized. All this the fruits and vegetables, and I always tell people this is more of a mental job than it is labor, because you're working in extreme weather conditions, and it's excruciating to work out in the heat. Mm-hmm. People get emotional, especially living in poverty. Mm-hmm. And so we need change. This is the march. We're going to come out. We're going to demand it. We invite everybody to come and participate. And there are other unions that are participating with us, and other groups, community groups, and farm workers statewide that are going to be coming in. And we hope that you can join us. Bring your signs, bring a hat, bring some water. We will have bathrooms out there, and on our Facebook page, we're going to give some information about where you can park, because that's always an issue. But thank you for having me on your show.
Well, thank you, Desiree. We love you here, and we will be out there in Sacra, Big Sacra, and we will have our free Aslan water bottles.
All right, we'll bring it. And also for our listeners, check if you want to see copies of the flyers that Desiree was referencing, check us on Aslan Press Tomorrow Instagram for the flyer, and also the Facebook group for the flyer.
Perfect. And thank you, Desiree, for joining us, and
thank
for
you,
your
Desiree.
wisdom and as always your words and palabras. Thank you, sister.
Thank you. And I'll get back to my novella, which it happens to be an incredible novella. The name of it is The World of a Married Couple, and it was written by two amazing writers, and it won a huge award. I'm recommending it to everybody.
The novella awards. Oh my God.
Oh, we love novelas here. Okay,
Yeah.
sister, we'll see you May 1st.
We'll see you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Buenas noches.
Viva la raza.
Que viva la raza.
Viva oh Mateo.
Y él es Dios o Mateo. Gracias a todos. Stay safe and warm.
That's right. And free Asla. Thank you, sister.